got a deal in contract representing the buyers. Whether that's advisable or not, debatable. The listing agent wants to use an attorney to handle the escrow. And I remember from one of your seminars at either CAB or IBBA, you mentioned something about here's what you do when you've got an attorney handling escrow to make sure you, the business broker, get paid. And I can't find it in my notes.
Um, eh, you have to make sure that you have a really good relationship with your client, first off, because yeah, you can't force the attorney to put your broker fees and all of that in the contract. What they will put in the contract is that you are, they will list the brokers and who the brokers represent and the fact that a fee is due, and they will say, um, hopefully you have a fee agreement with your buyer. And so they will say that they'll probably put something in there that says that the buyer is responsible for your fee, and that the seller, the seller's fee, or the seller's broker, you know, the seller is only responsible for the seller's broker's fee. So they'll
Okay.
typically put that in there. So is it the buyer's? Is it your client's attorney who wants to draft the purchase agreement, or it's actually the,
No, we use the CAB form,
oh, you use a
and
cap form. Okay.
fortunately, um, my compensation is listed or
Yeah,
indicated
it's already in there.
on okay. But yeah, I thought there was some analogy to putting a demand into escrow, but it wasn't called that exactly. Any
No, I
idea what
mean,
I'm talking about?
there is a form, but it's typically, so there is a cab form that's a broker fee form, and give, you'd have to modify it slightly or create. What I would do is go into Legito, print up the broker fee agreement, and then you can just make it in a Word doc, for
Mhm.
yourself, similar. So all it does is reiterate what the broker's fee is, and you have your client sign it, and then you deliver it to escrow. So that way, escrow has it. It Because I've never had escrow ask for a copy of my listing agreement. They've only asked what the commission was supposed to be so they could prepare a commission agreement that they have the seller sign. So if the attorney is going to do the escrow, I mean, that's weird. Not it. I hope the attorney does it right. You know, I no, literally when I was preparing, we were writing. I don't know if you've taken CAB 250 legal aspects, but yeah. So when we were pulling that together, there was an attorney that was in the group helping to write that course, and he was up in Northern California, and he was involved in a situation where he had represented the seller, and the buyer's attorney they had not used an escrow, and the buyer's attorney had not done a UCC search, and so it turned out there was some liens against the business. um, Transaction had closed and all that, and the liens hadn't been paid off, and seller was saying, hey, not my problem. And the buyer was unaware. Even in It was like the buyer, I mean, there is successor liability on certain things. So, the liens were against the assets of the business. The assets were not delivered free and clear of encumbrances. And the attorney was trying to figure out how, what to do next, um, so that he didn't end up with a malpractice suit. But ultimately, escrow serves a function. I mean, they do a lot. And I have a document that I had put together by a couple of the escrow companies. Since you're in California, Brian, I'll send it to you. But it's basically
Okay.
just says what escrow does for buyer and seller. So I'll email that to you, and maybe you can send that to the attorney and just say, hey, by the way, if you're going to be the escrow, then please make sure you do all these things for buyer and seller, because this is what escrow does. And but yeah, Brian,
Yeah, and In this case, I think it's something this particular attorney has done before. The reason he's involved is it's a like a liquor store and sandwich shop in San Francisco, and there's tobacco sales, so there's a tobacco license. And San
And a
Francisco is
liquor
trying to
license.
reduce the
You know
number
what?
of tobacco licenses.
Okay,
So
so
it's
if
this
it's a
whole
liquor store, liquor licenses, a transfer of liquor license in California or the sale of a liquor, anything with a liquor license in California requires an escrow, third party independent escrow. An attorney cannot by law do that. It requires an
oh,
escrow company. So
super interesting.
yeah,
So
so
yeah, this
that's
attorney's
kind of a
involved to
ABC law.
yeah, and that does ring a bell now.
That's the only thing that it actually requires. I mean, no other business that I'm aware of requires the use of an escrow company, but if there's a liquor license involved, it does. So, um, all right, Matt, you raised your hand. Did you want to copy that escrow thing too? Okay, shoot me your just put your email address in the chat for me.
Okay.
So I have it. I think I have Brian's already, but I don't necessarily have yours. I
Is
might.
is there a escrow company out there that specializes in business closings that is national or not necessarily state specific?
I don't know. I do know that, I mean, the escrow that I use in California, I've asked them before if they could do escrows in Oregon and Washington. They said no. They are strictly California. There may be some national escrow companies that do bulk sale, but I don't know.
I wonder if we could have a topic, and this is kind of interesting, if there is like maybe time permitting in the new year is to maybe do a case study on closing smaller transactions without an escrow. Is that something that we should consider or look into? Or I've been
You know,
asked, yeah,
I like escrow. I always want to use escrow because that way I ensure that I get paid. And
yeah,
especially when you're dealing, so think about it, the smaller the business transaction, the smaller the deal, the higher the liability and the higher the probability you're going to end up in court. But also, you're dealing on these smaller deals, you're dealing with people that are skimming cash and,
yeah,
not wanting to pay their taxes and trying, not paying their employees overtime and paying half of their employees in, either cash or gift cards or whatever. And so they're doing all these things that skirt the rules.
yeah.
You think if you give them an opportunity to not pay you, that they're not going to jump at that?
Every
Yeah,
time.
So
point. Yeah.
Every
so
time.
I absolutely want, especially on small businesses, I absolutely want everything going through escrow because otherwise I have, a very small probability of getting compensated for my work.
Very good. No, I think point well taken. I think that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, larger deals, if you're dealing with where the attorneys are drafting the purchase agreements, and sometimes they don't want to use an escrow, and you can't force them to, depending, unless there's a liquor license involved. But if it's professional service firm of some kind, I mean, only time I've ever had somebody refuse to use an escrow, it was a HR consulting firm.
Oh, there you
And I
go.
had a great relationship with the seller. I had no doubt she was going to pay me. And the buyers, they wired a check to her and she wired my compensation to me and it was fine. But
That's an
made me
interesting.
nervous.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. May I ask you a question about that deal? If it's still like fresh in your mind, was there any carve outs for like earnouts at all in this particular deal? I know that some of these larger companies have these earnouts built in.
It wasn't um they didn't have an earnout. They had the seller on a consulting agreement for up to a year or two. And um she also had a PI license or something that they needed to continue using for certain types of investigations, HR investigations. And so they wanted to retain her in the mix, but they were paying her for that as a consultant. So yeah,
Interesting.
I don't think there was any earn out involved in that though. No.
Thank you.